Shadows lean long across the stone, the kind of shadows that feel thicker than night itself. A draft stirs the dust, curling it into tiny storms at your feet, though of course you leave no prints. You stand before the gates of Derinkuyu, the ancient underground city in Turkey that once sheltered thousands of souls. The air smells faintly of damp earth and old iron, as if centuries have been sealed here with the doors themselves. The silence is so complete, you wonder if sound itself is reluctant to descend with you. And you wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke. The gates loom round and heavy, carved stone discs that once rolled into place to lock enemies out, or maybe to keep something in. Your invisible hand passes across their rough face, cool and pitted, scarred by centuries of hands that no longer remember you. A faint echo stirs behind, like a sigh caught in stone lungs. Somewhere below, you sense an entire labyrinth waiting, layer upon layer of chambers stacked into the earth. Before we step further, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you feel like joining me on nights like this. It helps keep the torches lit for future wanderings, and while you're here, leave a comment with your location and the time right now, as if carving your own mark into these ruins. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slip past the gate, descending a narrow corridor cut straight into stone. The walls brush close, damp with condensation, and every sound you make comes back doubled. A whisper of wind snakes through the passage, though there should be no wind this far underground. You pass niches carved into the walls, storage for grain, for wine, or maybe for things no one wanted the daylight to see. Researchers still argue that Derinkuyu was purely defensive, a shelter from invasion, but others claim it had deeper, more ritual purposes. You wonder why such immense effort was spent carving an entire hidden city rather than building higher under the sun. You turn a corner and find the corridor widening into a chamber. The ceiling arches overhead like an inverted bowl. Torch scorch still blackens the walls, faint rings of soot marking where ancient flames once burned. In one corner, a cracked idol lies toppled, its face worn to a blur, but the curve of its lips looks almost like a smirk. You pause there, invisible, as if caught in the idol's joke. Maybe it knows what still hides deeper down. The air grows colder as you continue. A stair spirals steeply, slick with moss, where droplets condense and fall like a lazy clock. Time blurs. Was it one turn of the stair or 10? You lose count, and the rhythm of droplets feels older than your heartbeat. Halfway down, you pass a doorway no wider than your shoulders. Inside, the chamber is empty, except for the strange flicker of light across its wall. It looks like water reflection, though no pool lies nearby. The glow shivers, fades, and vanishes the instant you blink. If you remember from earlier, the walls at the gate seemed to sigh. Now, this wall seems to breathe. You wonder what secret still hides behind it. At the stair's end, another round stone blocks the path. Its weight is unimaginable, yet someone once rolled it into place, sealing an entire passage behind. Did they shut it in panic? With triumph? With sorrow? Researchers still argue that Derinkuyu connected with neighboring underground cities, a hidden web stretching across miles. But here, the way is closed. and silence rules. You lean closer. The stone gives back the sound of your breath, warped and deep, as if answering in another tongue. You almost hear words, but the echoes fold before you can catch them. A playful thought crosses your mind. It's like the world's most ancient voicemail, waiting for someone who never came back. You drift onward through other halls, stables with troughs cut from stone, kitchens with soot-black ceilings, wells plunging deeper still. You pause at one shaft where light winks faintly far below, like a star misplaced in the earth. The stone around it feels warmer than the rest, and you think of the fires people once carried to survive these depths. Lost city, ancient ruins, archaeology mystery. Derinkuyu is all of these, and yet it is more. A labyrinth of absence, a place where every room feels occupied by silence itself. You pause once more in a chamber with a cracked pillar. Moss clings thickly, soft under your invisible touch. A rat scurries through a crevice, its tiny claws scratching like writing across stone. For a heartbeat, you almost think the pillar shifts, leaning just slightly as if listening. Then the sound fades and calm settles back, the kind of calm that could lull you into dreams if you let it. Still, you wonder why so many doors here remain sealed, how many lives ended behind them, how many stories vanished, walled away with no voice. No one has mapped every chamber. Even now, corridors branch into darkness that researchers hesitate to enter. The city hides its last secrets well, and you, drifting deeper with no lantern, begin to sense another threshold ahead, an archway cracked by pressure, its edges lit by the faintest shimmer of something not quite natural light. The moment you notice it, the air sharpens cold, carrying the taste of iron. Whatever lies beyond waits patiently, as if it has been waiting for centuries. You take another silent step, and the stair behind you seems to fold into shadow, leaving only the path forward. The unseen threshold draws you closer, and the glow leaks wider, like dawn trying to sneak in from beneath the world. The silence presses tighter. You wonder what secret still hides just beyond that cracked arch. You ease through the cracked archway, and the glow softens into pale moonlight pouring down from above. Suddenly, you're no longer buried in stone corridors, but standing within Petra, the rose-red city carved into desert cliffs of Jordan. Wind glides gently along the Suck, the narrow canyon leading in, carrying the smell of sand, warmed by day and cooled by night. The walls rise high on either side, glowing faintly as if lit from within, striated layers of pink, crimson, and violet curling like ribbons frozen in stone. You drift slowly, letting your invisible footsteps echo. Every sound here feels longer, drawn out by the canyon's embrace. Researchers still argue that Petra was a city of trade or a ceremonial heart, a marketplace of life or a monument of death. You wonder why both feel true at once. Far ahead, a faint torch flicker dances across the stone, but when you approach, no torch remains, only the lingering shimmer as if memory itself lights the way. You pause, invisible, and brush your hand across the wall. The sandstone crumbles slightly, soft beneath your touch, yet patterns emerge, half-formed carvings of wings, of eyes, of something almost alive. The thought stirs softly in your mind. Maybe this canyon itself was once considered a living thing. The passage opens suddenly, and before you towers Al-Khazneh, the treasury. Even in moonlight it gleams, columns rising sharp as spears, facades carved with detail too intricate to belong to stone so brittle. The air here hums faintly, almost like the hush of a crowd long gone, but still listening. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke. You step closer. Shadows gather in the deep niches, and one cracked idol looks down from above, its face worn, yet its gaze feels unwavering. You remember the smirk of the idol in Derinkuyu and wonder if these stone watchers are whispering to each other through time. The treasury's doorway yawns dark and empty. You drift past its threshold. The air smells faintly metallic, like coins rubbed together. Inside, the chamber widens, its walls cut smooth. A cold draft brushes your cheek, though no opening is visible. You pause to listen. There it is again, the faint sigh you first heard underground. A connection? Or just your mind, weaving threads between ruins that never truly spoke to each other? You imagine the traders who once walked here, their sandals stirring dust, their voices bouncing against these walls. Yet you also recall the myths, that Petra was built by giants or by magicians who shaped stone like clay. Researchers still argue whether Nabatean masons carved every detail by hand or whether some secrets of their craft remain untold. You wonder what secret still hides beneath these facades, hollow or solid, treasure or tomb. At one corner of the treasury, a small fissure opens in the rock. You slip through, invisible, brushing past cool stone. The fissure curves upward, then widens into a chamber lit strangely from above. Here, the light reflects like liquid silver, as if the ceiling leaks moonlight through unseen cracks. The floor is uneven, scattered with shards of pottery. Some still bear patterns, spirals and mirrored shapes, designs too precise for such fragments. You kneel beside one, letting your invisible fingers trace its line. It almost hums beneath your touch, like a note too soft for hearing. Time blurs again. You blink, and for a moment, the chamber looks whole, intact, with jars neatly arranged, statues unbroken. Then the vision folds back, and you're left with fragments scattered in dust. You smile softly to yourself. Ruins like to play tricks, showing you how they once lived only when they think you've earned it. Out beyond the fissure, the canyon stretches. The walls are striated with swirls of color, almost as if painted by shifting fire. You pass into another open space where tombs line the rock like doors cut for shadows. Their entrances gape wide, but inside lies nothing. Emptiness, deeper than night. The silence grows heavier, and your invisible form drifts closer. You lean into one of the doorways, and a faint hum prickles your ears. It's not wind, it's too steady, too low. You wonder why it feels almost like a heartbeat. Researchers still argue whether Petra's tombs were ever truly filled, or whether they were built as symbolic gateways. You find yourself considering the second option as you hear that low thrum, like a door not to earth, but to somewhere else. As you walk back toward the main canyon, the wind rises suddenly, carrying grains of sand that hiss across the stone. For a moment, it feels like the walls themselves are speaking in hushed voices, each grain a syllable. The wind dies as quickly as it rose, and calm returns, leaving the air cooler, the stars above sharper. You pause, invisible, before another carved facade. This one is fractured, its columns leaning just slightly, as if the stone had once been soft and began to melt. The cracks glow faintly with moonlight, drawing your eye to the shadows within. You step closer, and just for a breath, You think you see movement deep inside, something shifting, leaning, watching, then it vanishes, and you're left with only darkness. Softly, almost like a lull, the canyon draws you forward again. You follow the path as it winds deeper, facades rising like silent guardians on either side. The night grows cooler, and the stars above blur into ribbons of silver. For a moment, you lose track of time. Were you here minutes, hours, or centuries? The stones don't answer. They never do. Still, they offer you something else. A doorway at the end of the canyon, smaller than the others, its arch broken but still standing. It feels like an invitation, a threshold waiting for you alone. You hesitate at the edge, sensing something beyond, something heavier, darker, and perhaps even deeper than these rose-red walls could hide. The silence deepens. You wonder what secret still lies past that fractured arch. The fractured arch dissolves into blackness, and you find yourself submerged, drifting downward where no breath is needed. The sea folds over you with a hush, its weight pressing gently against your invisible skin. Darkness sways around you, broken only by ribbons of pale light that flicker through from above, as though the moon herself had dropped her veil into the waves. Salt touches your senses, sharp and metallic, carrying with it the deep cold of an older world. Ahead, the shape of the Yonaguni monument begins to reveal itself. It rises from the ocean floor like the remains of a forgotten pyramid, steps stacked and terraces slanting, cut edges so sharp they look more like architecture than accident. You glide closer, invisible, your presence stirring only a trail of bubbles that vanish quickly into the stillness. You wouldn't believe the stories these stones could tell if they spoke. Some say they are natural formations, the result of fractured sandstone split by the sea. Others whisper that they are ruins of a civilization too old to name, a city swallowed by the Pacific long before history began. Researchers still argue, architecture or accident, lost city or mere geology. And you, drifting weightless, wonder why your heart insists they must be both. The water carries a low groan, the sound of waves pressing against the stone. As you near the first stairway, the light bends strangely. It catches in ripples along the surface, then refracts into shimmering grids across the monument. For a moment, the carvings look alive, lines of fire dancing across submerged terraces. You drift lower, brushing your invisible hand against the first step. The stone is cold, slick with sea growth, yet perfectly flat beneath the mossy touch. The stairway descends in broad tiers. Each step could hold a crowd, and as you float downward, time blurs again. You almost see the shapes of people moving, figures gliding along the stairs, their feet stirring sand. But the vision dissolves into schools of fish darting through shadows. A playful metaphor crosses your mind. It's as if the ocean borrowed costumes from history, dressing its fish in robes of memory just to fool you for a heartbeat. The deeper you drift, the stranger the monument grows. Passages open between terraces, narrow corridors where light hesitates to follow. You slip inside one, your hands brushing walls that lean too straight to be natural. The silence thickens. Only the sound of your own invisible drift remains. At the far end, the corridor opens into a cavern, its ceiling carved into perfect right angles. On one wall, you notice what looks like a face. Broad nose, wide mouth, eyes hollowed deep. The carving is worn, softened by centuries of water, yet its gaze holds firm. You pause, invisible, as though it might notice you, despite your unseen presence. A chill drifts through. Perhaps it is only the cold water, or perhaps something older in these stones still lingers. Researchers still argue whether markings on Yonaguni resemble writing or mere scratches of erosion. You let your eyes trace the lines, and for a moment, they do look like script. Spirals, hooks, slashes, before dissolving back into cracks. You wonder what secret still hides in those unreadable signs. You leave the cavern and rise toward a vast terrace, where the monument's profile reveals itself most clearly. A broad platform cut in levels like a stepped pyramid buried in sand. The surface is cracked, coral sprouting like tiny flowers. The light from above paints it all in silver blue. For a moment, it looks like a city square, drowned in dreams. You float over the edge. Below, the monument drops into deeper darkness, a cliff plunging straight down. Faintly, in the depths, you see another glow. Red this time, not the blue of the moon. It flickers like embers in the abyss. You pause, wondering if it's volcanic activity, or if the monument hides something still alive, something that should not burn beneath the sea. You drift closer to the edge. The current pulls softly, coaxing you downward. Sand stirs like smoke at the drop-off, curling into the black. For a heartbeat, you feel the weight of silence heavier than water, as though the ocean itself has paused to watch. You whisper in your thoughts, "Not yet," and drift back from the cliff. The glow remains below, patient, as if it has waited centuries for a visitor bold enough to descend fully. Instead, you arc across the upper terrace. A school of silver fish swirls around you, scales flashing like tiny mirrors. They scatter into the cracks, vanishing into narrow gaps between stones. You follow their trail and notice one fissure wider than the rest, like a door wedged, half open. Beyond it, darkness stretches, but a faint green luminescence pulses within. You slip through. Inside, the walls narrow close, barnacles crunching under your unseen touch. The light glows stronger, spilling across carvings hidden deep in shadow. They spiral inward, pattern upon pattern, until they form the outline of a stair. But this stair doesn't climb. It spirals downward into black water, endless, as though sinking through the very bones of the sea. Time blurs again. Did you drift inside seconds ago or centuries ago? You let the thought dissolve. The stair vanishes into shadow before you can follow, but the glow lingers, promising that the path still exists if you choose it. When you slip back outside, the sea feels heavier, darker. The monument looms behind you like a slumbering beast, terraces stacked upon terraces. You glance once more toward the abyssal glow, still flickering far below, then turn your gaze toward a narrow archway carved in stone, rising like a gateway. Beyond it, another current pulls, as though urging you towards some other ancient secret waiting to be found. The silence deepens. You wonder what secret still lies past that drowned arch. Stone closes around you once more, the water falling away as though you've stepped from the sea into the hollow lung of the earth. Echoes replace the sound of waves, echoes that do not belong to you, but answer anyway. You stand inside the tunnels of Chavin de Huantar, deep in the Peruvian Andes, where walls lean close and ceilings dip low, creating a maze of stone that twists in every direction. The first breath here is damp and metallic, like clay pressed hard against copper. The air carries a faint vibration, almost like a hidden hum buried in the stone itself. Shadows collect in corners, but you sense them moving, as though the walls shift while your eyes wander elsewhere. Researchers still argue what these labyrinthine passages were meant for: ceremonies, rituals, or disorienting initiations that tested courage. You wouldn't believe the stories these stones could tell if they spoke, but if you press your invisible ear close enough, you might hear them whisper anyway. You drift down a narrow hall. Your invisible hand glides over stone blocks fitted so snugly that not even the edge of a blade could slip between them. The surface feels smooth, polished, almost warm, as if the stone remembers the touch of torches that once flared here. From somewhere ahead, a faint trickle of water echoes, repeating endlessly like a chant. At one junction, you stop. 3 corridors stretch before you, each swallowing sound differently. One returns your breath as a sharp echo. Another swallows it entirely, leaving only silence. The third repeats your sound, not once, but twice, as though someone else is breathing just behind you. You turn slowly, but no one follows. No one ever does. Still, the illusion lingers, curling around your spine. You choose the echoing path. The corridor narrows further, forcing you to brush your hands against both walls at once. The stone is damp, flecked with moss in hidden seams. You pause where the tunnel bends and notice a carving on the wall. A jaguar's face, its fangs bared, its eyes wide. The lines are deep, and for a moment they seem to ripple, like the animal is still breathing, still watching. You blink, and it's only stone again. This is the heart of Chavin, the Lanzon, the great carved idol hidden at the center of the labyrinth. You step closer, unseen, until the chamber opens wide. The idol towers before you, its surface etched with twisting lines, figures within figures, human features dissolving into serpent coils and jaguar jaws. It seems to flicker in the dimness, impossible to take in all at once. Your eyes follow one line, and it becomes another. Your mind insists it has seen every angle, but the idol disagrees. A faint sound trickles from the walls, water running somewhere above. Yet as you listen, it shifts into a low murmur, like voices humming just beyond hearing. You let the sound fill the chamber. It rises, falls, loops endlessly. It is no wonder researchers still argue whether these tunnels were designed to create acoustic illusions, shaping sound into something divine. You wonder what secret still hides in this endless hum. What message was left here for ears more patient than yours? You drift closer to the idol. The stone feels cool under your invisible hand, though the lines etched in it burn faintly like embers. For a heartbeat, you see the idol whole, not cracked, not ancient, but shining with paint, gold, and obsidian eyes. Priests move in the shadows, their faces masked as jaguars, their voices raised in chants that merge with the rushing water. The air trembles with heat and incense. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision folds away, leaving you only damp stone and the hollow echo of silence. A soft smile stirs on your lips. Ruins enjoy their tricks, don't they? They like to tease you with glimpses of what they once were, as if deciding whether to trust you with their memory. You turn to another tunnel. This one slopes upward. The walls widen slightly, and a faint light seeps in from cracks above. You follow it, invisible, and step into a small courtyard half buried in moss. The stars glitter faintly overhead, though clouds roll across them like smoke. The air smells sharper here, pine and wet earth mixing with the faint tang of stone. At the edge of the courtyard stands another carving, a human figure with serpent hair, its arms raised, its mouth open in a scream or a laugh. The sound of water still follows, though no stream is visible. You lean closer, and the echo seems to pass directly through you, humming against your bones. It almost feels like the stone itself is breathing, its voice too low to be caught. Researchers still argue whether Chavin connected its labyrinth with rivers underground, creating illusions of voices from the earth. You wonder why the echoes feel more personal, almost like whispers meant for you alone. A corridor leads away from the courtyard, its arch cracked and tilted. The stone edges glow faintly in the starlight. You pass beneath, and the air cools again. Shadows gather, denser than before. You pause, invisible, letting your ears adjust. The silence is complete, too complete. For a moment, it feels as though time itself is holding its breath. Somewhere deeper, a single drop of water falls, then another, steady as a heartbeat. The rhythm draws you forward into tunnels that fold tighter and darker. You do not know where they lead, only that another threshold waits, another secret pressing against stone, ready to open itself only when you step closer. The silence deepens. You wonder what secret still lies past that unseen bend. The darkness releases you gently, and the world shifts again. Moss cools the air, and the hum of the Andes fades into something wetter, greener. You stand within a jungle where vines hang like curtains, their tips brushing against your unseen shoulders. A clearing opens before you, and at its center lies a wall, smooth, broad, and half swallowed by roots that seem intent on keeping it hidden. This is Selvara, the ruin no map admits yet no explorer ever forgets. Its stories move only in whispers, a city sealed before memory, a vault locked not by man's will, but by the earth itself. You step closer, invisible, as though the jungle invited you here to witness what no eyes should. The wall gleams faintly in the dimness, even beneath the film of moss. You brush it with your unseen hand, cold, unyielding. Yet as your palm lingers, the surface seems to shiver, just enough to remind you that it is no ordinary stone. It reflects nothing, yet it feels like a mirror, showing you not your face, but your absence. The roots gripping the wall twist in unnatural ways, spiraling tight as if drawn by something below. Their bark is scarred where it presses against the surface, as though even the jungle cannot break through. A single crack runs across the wall, thin but deep, vanishing into shadows that breathe cold air. You lean close. A current sighs from within, whispering across your cheek like a warning. The sealed vault has no door, only this one fracture. Yet the way it exhales suggests hollow space inside, vast, waiting, silent. Researchers who stumbled here swore they heard faint sounds within, the scrape of stone on stone, the faint roll of distant thunder, even the beating of drums. You listen now. At first, there is nothing. Then, softer than breath, a murmur curls from the crack, so low it could be the shift of earth, so steady it might be a voice. You drift along the wall. More carvings emerge from the moss. At first, they look like spirals, looping endlessly. But as the moss peels away, they resemble eyes, wide, lidless, staring outward. Each one seems to fix on you, unblinking, as though they are guardians watching who dares to pass. Their edges shimmer faintly in the half-light. Your invisible fingers trace one spiral. It feels warmer than the stone around it, as though some hidden fire still glows within. For an instant, your mind fills with an image not your own. A chamber lit by torches, walls lined with these very eyes, all of them glowing, all of them watching. At the center, a door. This door, slammed shut by hands, trembling with urgency. Shouts echo, fading, then silence. The vision blurs, vanishes, leaving you once more before the sealed wall, your palm cooling against stone. A low rumble stirs beneath your feet. The roots tremble. For a heartbeat, you think the vault is shifting, preparing to open. But the jungle hushes it again, stilling the tremor, as if warning you away. The air here is thick with the scent of wet soil and flowers you cannot see. A moth flutters past, its wings brushing the wall. The instant it lands upon the crack, it stiffens, then falls, lifeless, into the moss. You crouch low, invisible, watching the shadows deepen. The crack exhales again, longer this time, like the vault is aware of your presence. What lies inside? A chamber of relics? A tomb sealed against time? Or something still alive? Something that breathes beneath the earth, waiting for the root-wrapped wall to weaken. The jungle stirs. Leaves shift, though no wind moves them. You take one last glance at the mirrored surface, and for a breath, it shows you something impossible. Your own reflection, blurred, almost forming, before vanishing into nothing. You step back. The wall stands silent, patient, unwilling to reveal more. You know the secret is real. You also know it will not be yours tonight. The air cools, the silence deepens, and once again the world begins to tilt, carrying you away from Selvara's vault toward the next threshold. The jungle opens like a curtain, and you drift into another silence. Different, vast, filled with weight. The air grows brighter, yet heavy with humidity, and a chorus of unseen insects hums softly at the edges. You step into a clearing where stone towers stretch high above the canopy, piercing the sky like jagged fingers. This is Tekal, the ancient city of temples that once touched the stars. Roots claw at the stairways, curling tight around every block, as if the jungle itself wants to drag the temples back into the earth. The stone is warm beneath the ghost of your touch, its surface rough and pitted from centuries of rain. Yet when the light slants just so, carvings emerge, faces staring, gods with wide eyes, glyphs that no wind has erased. You drift up the steep steps of Temple the One, each one uneven, worn by thousands of feet that once climbed with offerings and fears. The climb is silent for you, though your mind hears echoes, drums pounding, voices chanting, the shuffle of dancers carrying torches that flicker in the night. You pause halfway, listening. The jungle answers with a deep growl, not a beast, but thunder rolling far away. For a moment, it sounds like a continuation of those ancient drums. At the summit, the view swallows you whole. The canopy rolls like an ocean, endless green, broken only by the other temple tops rising like islands. Mist drifts lazily between them, softening their edges as if they float above the earth. You breathe in, though the air tastes of damp stone and sap, and feel the faint vibration of the wind pressing against this high perch. Researchers still argue that these towers were aligned with the stars, each temple marking the passage of planets, each plaza echoing the rhythm of celestial events. You wonder why a people would carve their lives into the heavens and why they left so suddenly, abandoning a city built with such precision. Was it drought, war, or something less visible, like the silence that now presses on your ears? Beneath you, Temple 2 looms across the plaza. Its face tilts westward, where the sun will one day sink in fire. A bird wheels above, its cry sharp, then fading, leaving the air heavier than before. You close your eyes and imagine night falling here, the stars appearing one by one, aligning with the temples until the whole city glows like a clock set to the rhythm of eternity. The moss creeping up the walls feels like slow handwriting, rewriting the city letter by letter. Vines wrap like chains, and roots pry the stones apart. You run a hand along one block, marveling that it still fits so tightly against its neighbors that even your invisible touch cannot slip between. How did hands so ancient lift, place, and bind these stones with such precision? Researchers still argue that they may have known methods long forgotten, secrets lost with their civilization. You drift down again, crossing the central plaza. A stela rises here, tall and thin, its surface worn almost smooth. Only hints of a face remain, the nose sharp, the eyes sunken. You wouldn't believe the stories this stela could tell if it spoke. Rulers crowned, battles won, ceremonies that stretched into dawn. Now it stands mute, a shadow of memory. A flicker catches your eye. Near the base of the stela, where the moss thickens, a faint glow pulses, weak, as though light trapped long ago still struggles to escape. You lean close, curious. For a moment, you think it's simply a trick of your tired eyes, but then the glow fades deliberately, as if aware of your attention. The plaza quiets further. Even the insects hush. A single leaf drops from the high canopy, twisting slowly in the heavy air, then landing with a sound too sharp for its weight. You wait, listening. Nothing follows, yet you feel as though the entire city has noticed you, though you remain unseen. Your gaze drifts toward Temple the Four, its summit lost in mist. They say from there you can see the world stretch endless, horizon after horizon. Tonight, you sense only that the stairway up is darker than it should be, each step cloaked in shadow, deeper than night. Something waits at the top, patient. You let the silence cradle you. Time here feels unpinned, as though centuries and minutes slide across each other like stone blocks fitting together. You take one last look at the towers stabbing through the sky, their crowns swallowed in mist, and wonder what secret still hides in their alignment. What message was meant for eyes that no longer gaze upward? The mist thickens, curling like a veil. When it parts, you are already elsewhere, slipping away from Tikal's towers and into another waiting mystery. The mist parts like a curtain, and beneath it, a different air greets you, thin, sharp, touched with the dry cold of high altitude. You find yourself on a plateau, the sky impossibly wide, painted with streaks of pale gold as the sun leans low. The silence here is brittle, as though sound itself has been thinned by the thin air. Scattered across the ground are blocks of stone, so immense, so precise, they look less like ruins and more like pieces of some colossal machine shattered long ago. This is Puma Punku, where the stones lie heavier than secrets. You drift closer, the ground crunching faintly beneath you, gravel, dust, fragments of forgotten masonry. The first block you approach is cut so cleanly it feels wrong, its edges sharp enough to catch the fading light. Like a blade, you brush your fingers along the surface. It's colder than the air around it, smoother than you expect. Not chipped, not cracked, shaped, as if molded by tools that should not have existed. Researchers still argue that these stones, some weighing over 100 tons, could not have been dragged by simple ropes or rolled on logs. They lie scattered, yet their faces fit together like puzzle pieces. You imagine an invisible giant hand lifting them with ease, only to drop them carelessly, letting them fall in ruin. The question hovers. Were they ever completed, or were they destroyed before the story of their builders could even begin? A wind sighs across the plateau, tugging dust into little spirals that dance for a moment before collapsing. Your eyes follow a row of H-shaped blocks, each carved with grooves and slots so precise they look like interlocking parts of some vast, forgotten system. Not random, not decorative, purposeful. You tilt your head, wondering what they once supported. A temple? A gateway? Or something stranger? A mechanism of stone designed to move with the heavens? The plateau stretches empty around you, the Andes rising jagged in the distance. Their peaks hold the last blush of light, fading into indigo. The stones below, though unmoving, feel alive, like chess pieces scattered after a game no one remembers. You pause, the air thick with that peculiar contradiction. Everything here is broken, and yet nothing looks accidental. You crouch beside one block, lying half buried in the soil. Its corner gleams faintly, polished beyond reason. You wouldn't believe the stories it could tell if it spoke, of the builders who shaped it, of the storms it has weathered, of the day it was torn from its place and left here, exposed to the sky. Somewhere to your right, a faint sound breaks the stillness. Not wind, not bird, more like the brief scrape of stone on stone, though nothing moves. You glance across the plateau, and for a heartbeat, a shadow seems to flicker at the edge of the blocks. A trick of light, perhaps, yet your invisible presence feels suddenly less alone. The air cools further. You draw a breath that tastes faintly metallic, as if the stones themselves are leaching minerals into the atmosphere. You close your eyes, and time blurs. You see torches carried by figures in cloaks, sparks rising into the night. You hear the deep hum of voices chanting, low, rhythmic, shaking the plateau like the beat of a hidden heart. Then it's gone, leaving only silence, leaving you wondering why such visions still linger here. You rise again and walk between the fallen giants. Some lean at odd angles, their weight too much even for the earth. Others rest cleanly aligned, as if waiting for a hand to lift them back into place. And always, always, the question presses in. How did hands, thousands of years ago, cut with such perfection? How did they move the immovable? Researchers still argue that even modern cranes would struggle to set these stones. Some suggest ramps, ropes, endless labor. Others whisper of forgotten knowledge, technologies lost with their creators. The debate circles endlessly, like the wind sweeping over this plateau, returning always to the same unanswered riddle. As night gathers, the stones seem to shift in tone, their surfaces glowing faintly silver in the rising moonlight. The edges catch the glow like shards of glass scattered across the ground. You imagine them forming something whole, gleaming, immense, a vision both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Then the thought dissolves, leaving only fragments, just as you see them now. You let your gaze rest on the horizon, where darkness swallows the last ridge of mountains. A chill brushes against you, carrying dust, silence, and questions. The stones remain, broken yet unbroken, waiting for a secret no one dares to tell. And just beyond the furthest block, a shadowed path opens, narrow, curving down into a cavernous dark. You step toward it, drawn onward, curious what chamber or echo might wait beneath. The path draws you downward, narrow and winding, the air cooling as though each step removes you further from the world above. The sound of the wind fades until only the scrape of unseen stone greets your ears. You drift into a chamber, broad and low-ceilinged, its walls breathing shadows that shift as if alive. This is Surnath, or what remains of it. Few claim to have seen these caverns, and fewer still to have returned with memory intact. At first, the walls look blank, mere stone dampened by trickling water. But then, as your eyes settle, you notice the faint shimmer of symbols, lines carved so shallow they almost vanish when you blink. You lean closer, and the carvings flare softly, faint light tracing the grooves as though inked by fire. The instant you try to focus, the glow dims, leaving only empty rock. You try again. Blink. The marks are there, then gone. Words that will not stay still. Researchers still argue that Surnath's inscriptions are not writing at all, but the echoes of thought carved into stone by rituals long lost. Others insist they were once legible glyphs, erased deliberately by the people who feared what they had written. Whatever the truth, the walls seem to play tricks, mocking your attempts to understand. A drop of water falls from the ceiling and lands on your shoulder, startling in the hush. You glance upward. The ceiling is veined with roots, pale and trembling, like nerves twitching in sleep. They seem to listen, quivering when you shift. You move more quietly, careful not to disturb the silence. Farther into the cavern, the symbols grow larger, curling into spirals that catch the corner of your vision. You stop before one that almost forms a doorway. For a moment, you swear you see it open, stone edges splitting apart, revealing a faint glow beyond. But when you step closer, it is nothing, only the same flat wall staring back at you. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke, of those who wandered in seeking knowledge, only to forget their own names, of priests who carved the caverns so their secrets could never fully disappear, yet never fully be found. The walls hold memory the way moss holds water, soaked deep, invisible until touched. A sound rises, soft, like whispers, curling through the stone. You tilt your head. The words are not clear, but they carry rhythm, as though chants layered one atop another. You press your palm to the wall, and for a breath, the stone pulses, faintly warm, like a heartbeat beneath your hand. Then it stills, leaving you uncertain if it was real or dream. Your steps carry you deeper, through a low arch where the ceiling almost brushes your head. On the other side, the cavern expands suddenly, vast and domed. A lake lies at its center, black as obsidian, its surface perfectly still. You watch the faint glimmer of symbols ripple across it, though nothing moves. When you blink, the symbols vanish, leaving only your reflection wavering on the dark water. Time feels strange here. Seconds stretch, fold, collapse into each other. You kneel at the lake's edge, dipping a finger in. The surface breaks with a faint ring, and the ripples glow faint blue, lighting the cavern with ghostly shimmer. They travel outward, reaching the edges where the stone walls seem to breathe, then fade to blackness again. Researchers still argue whether Cernath ever existed as a city above ground, or whether it was born entirely beneath an inverted world, a civilization that thrived only in shadow. The debate circles endlessly, with no proof beyond half-remembered accounts and symbols no one can read. And yet, standing here, you feel as though something remembers you. The whispers return, louder now, tugging at the corners of your thoughts. You take a step back. The symbols on the wall flare once more, bright enough to sear your vision. They shift, rearranging themselves, then scatter like dust blown by wind. When your sight clears, the cavern looks ordinary again. Stone, water, silence, as though nothing had ever happened. You stand in the quiet, unsure how long you've been here. Minutes, hours, centuries blurred thin. The water reflects only darkness now, unbroken. You breathe slowly, steadying yourself, and notice an archway beyond the lake, narrow, carved with lines that don't fade when you blink. Unlike the others, these remain, waiting, solid, undeniable. You step toward it. Your shadow stretches long across the black water, then dissolves as you cross into the arch. Another world waits on the other side, rising from mist and lotus-filled pools. You step through the archway, and the air shifts, warm, humid, fragrant with water lilies. The ground beneath you feels soft with moss, damp with mist rising from shallow pools. The first thing you see are causeways of stone stretching across the water, wide and worn, their surfaces dappled with green. This is Angkor, a city swallowed by jungle, where temples bloom like stone flowers among lotus ponds. The causeway beneath your feet feels both strong and fragile, each block immense, yet softened by centuries of rain. Along its sides, guardians line the path, carved nagas, multi-headed serpents, their faces broken and half-sunken. Some stare with fierce intensity, others lean at angles, their stone eroded into shapes that look almost like melting wax. You brush your hand along one, feeling the cool dampness of moss clinging to its scales. The water on either side is still, black yet reflecting pale green light from the canopy above. Lotus blossoms drift lazily, their pink petals folded for the night. The air smells faintly sweet, tinged with earth and decay. Somewhere, a frog croaks, low and resonant, and ripples spread across the surface. The sound vanishes quickly, leaving the silence deeper. Researchers still argue how Angkor's vast waterways were engineered, whether for defense, irrigation, or ritual. The channels stretch like veins across the land, feeding reservoirs so large they look like lakes. To stand here, even invisible, is to feel the scale of it. A city not built against the jungle, but woven into it. And yet the jungle has reclaimed it, pulling vines through every crack, sinking roots into every tower. You wander further along the causeway, stepping carefully as the stones slope unevenly. Ahead, an archway rises, its lintel carved with dancing figures. Their poses are frozen mid-motion, arms curving gracefully, smiles faint as though shared between them. You wouldn't believe the stories these dancers could tell if they spoke. Festivals that lasted through the night, fires reflecting in pools, the rhythm of drums echoing across stone. Now they dance only in silence, their feet forever fixed in moss. A breath of wind stirs, carrying the scent of wet earth and something older, metallic, like rust or blood. You pause, listening. A soft splash ripples in the water beside you. Nothing moves when you glance, yet for a heartbeat, the reflection shows another figure walking beside you, tall and cloaked, vanishing the instant you blink. The surface is still again, save for a drifting lotus leaf. You continue onward, crossing into the heart of the temple grounds. Towers rise around you, their faces carved with serene Buddhas, gazing in every direction. Their expressions are gentle, but under moonlight, their smiles carry something else, knowing, patient, unreadable. You tilt your head, trying to meet their eyes, but each gaze seems to slide away, as if they are not watching you, but watching something far beyond. You drift into a hall, its pillars leaning slightly, their bases thick with vines. The stone is cool, the shadows long, and faint patterns cling to the walls, faded murals of battles and parades. A torch once burned here, the smoke staining the ceiling black. Now the air is damp, heavy, with the smell of wet stone and lichen. Researchers still argue why Angkor was abandoned. Some say the water system failed. Others suggest war, disease, or gradual decline. Yet here, with the pools so carefully laid, the temples still rising proud through the jungle, it feels less like abandonment and more like a city deliberately erased. Its people stepping away, leaving their gods behind. At the far end of the hall, a doorway gapes, choked with roots that twist like frozen snakes. You duck beneath them, entering a chamber where moonlight spills through a collapsed roof. The light glimmers on the floor, revealing a scattering of broken statues. One is a headless figure, seated cross-legged. Another is a torso, lying face down, its arms missing. You kneel, brushing moss away from one fallen piece. Its eyes, though cracked, still shine faintly as if polished. A whisper curls through the air, not words, but something softer, like a sigh released from stone. You pause, straining to hear. The sound fades, replaced by the faint hum of insects starting their night chorus. Time here blurs again, as though centuries have folded together in this chamber. You imagine the roof whole, torches burning, dancers moving in shadow. Then the vision dissolves into moss and ruin. You step back out, retracing your way along the causeway. The guardians remain, watching silently as you leave. The lotus pools gleam, calm as mirrors, their blossoms glowing faint in the moonlight. You pause, gazing into the still surface. For a moment, you think you see your own invisible reflection, but distorted, rippling with patterns, like the symbols from Surnath. Then the water calms, leaving only the blossoms drifting, unbothered. The causeway narrows as it leads toward another shadowed archway at the far edge. You step toward it, feeling the air cool again, touched with salt as though the sea itself waits beyond. The jungle fades behind you, and the air sharpens with the tang of salt. You step out onto a shore where the sea heaves gently, its surface dark as obsidian under the moon. Ahead, rising from the water, are walls of stone, basalt pillars stacked like organ pipes, tall and black, forming a city that floats half submerged. This is Nan Madol, the city on the sea, a labyrinth of channels and islets held together by impossible architecture. You drift forward, the water lapping at invisible feet, cool and rhythmic, pulling you into its cadence. The pillars loom above, wet with sea spray, their surfaces glistening like polished glass. Each stone is massive, longer than your height, heavier than thought. Yet here they are, stacked with deliberate order, forming walls, walkways, chambers. Researchers still argue how such blocks were moved, carried across miles of ocean without sails or wheels, placed so carefully that they have endured centuries of storms. You run your hand across one pillar. The basalt feels alive, slick, humming faintly beneath your touch. The sound of waves echoes between the walls, creating a hollow rhythm, as though the stones themselves are playing a low drum. You step deeper into the channels, water curling around the bases of the walls, reflecting shards of moonlight that flicker and vanish with each ripple. On one islet, a platform rises, moss clinging to its edges. Broken statues lie scattered, faces carved in stone, their eyes eroded into empty sockets. You wouldn't believe the stories these statues could tell if they spoke, of chiefs crowned with garlands, priests pouring offerings into the sea, voices chanting as torches burned against the night. Now they stare only at the tide, waiting for ceremonies that will never return. The air smells of brine and something else, something metallic, sharp, lingering in the back of your throat. You pause, listening. A splash echoes down one of the channels, followed by silence. You glance, but nothing stirs. The water lies smooth again, betraying no movement. For a moment, though, you imagine shapes just beneath the surface, dark, shifting, curling around the bases of the walls. Researchers still argue whether Nan-Madol was a royal capital, a sacred complex, or even a fortress of exile. Some legends call it a haunted city, built on bones, ruled by sorcerers who commanded spirits to carry the basalt. Others whisper of sacrifices offered to the sea itself. The truth remains drowned, hidden beneath layers of coral and silence. You cross a narrow bridge of stone, its surface slick with seaweed. The water beneath glows faintly, pale blue swirls drifting like lanterns. Bioluminescence, you tell yourself. Yet the glow pulses rhythmically, as though following the beat of a heart too large to imagine. You slow your steps, the rhythm syncing with your own breath, until you're not sure which belongs to you and which to the city. At the center of the complex, you find a courtyard, a flat expanse of stone where weeds have pushed through the cracks. Moonlight falls evenly here, revealing a circle carved into the ground. At first, it looks like decoration, but then you notice the grooves run deep, precise, as though marking positions of stars or tides. You kneel, tracing one line, feeling its sharpness even after centuries. What secret still hides in this geometry? Was it a calendar, a compass, or something meant to summon forces now forgotten? You sit in the silence, letting the sea breeze brush against your face. The air tastes of salt, thick with memory. For a moment, you imagine the courtyard alive again, drums echoing across the channels, fires flickering in the wind, shadows of dancers moving in circles. Then the vision fades, leaving only moonlight and broken walls. The tide rises slowly, slipping higher along the basalt pillars. The water's voice deepens, echoing in the hollow spaces. You watch as the reflection of the moon shatters into 1,000 ripples, each one carrying its own flicker of light. Time here feels liquid, blurred, stretching outward with the tide, folding inward with the current. A whisper of air drifts through the channels, carrying with it the faintest sigh, not from sea or stone. You turn, and in the far corner of the complex, an archway glimmers faintly, half sunken in dark water. Its curve reflects the moon like a blade drawn just above the surface. Without hesitation, you step toward it, the water chilling your ankles, then your knees until you cross into shadow again. Mist clings to you as though it has hands. Cool droplets bead on your skin, soft and persistent, as the ground beneath your steps changes from damp stone to something brittle, almost like bone. You lift your gaze, and there they stand, the Azuran spires. Towers of pale rock stretch upward, impossibly thin, impossibly tall, piercing the low-hanging clouds. They shimmer faintly as if light itself cannot decide whether to stay or pass through. The silence here is profound, so complete you can hear the slow rhythm of your own breath. Then, faintly, the spires hum. The sound is not sharp, but a resonance that drifts through the air, low and steady, as though the pillars themselves are tuning forks struck by invisible hands. You step closer, mist curling around your legs, cool and silvery, swallowing your outline, but never your sight of the towers. The ground is scattered with fragments of stone, thin as blades, brittle to the touch. You kneel, brushing moss away, and see faint carvings etched into the shards, spirals, lines, fragments of symbols. Some are so precise, you wonder if they were cut with tools sharper than any bronze or iron. Researchers still argue whether these etchings are natural fractures or the remnants of a language no one has ever decoded. The spires shift as you circle them. At least, that's what it feels like. You take 3 steps, and the angle changes, their heights uneven, their arrangement altered. You blink, but they remain rooted. Perhaps it is only the fog, the way it coils and uncoils around the stone. Still, you can't shake the impression that the spires are watching you as much as you watch them. A sudden breeze moves through, soft and cold, carrying the faint scent of rain mixed with something mineral, like wet iron. The hum deepens, reverberating in your chest. You stand at the base of the tallest spire, and its surface gleams with an inner glow, pale blue, faint but steady. You place your hand against it, and the stone is warm, unexpectedly warm, as though it holds a sun hidden within. You wouldn't believe the stories these spires could tell if they spoke. Some say they were built by a forgotten civilization long before pyramids or ziggurats. Others whisper they are natural formations, though no geologist has ever explained how stone can grow this way, balanced like needles piercing the sky. And then there are the rumors, the ones that call the Azuran spires lightning anchors, meant to draw storms from the heavens and bind their energy. You lean back, craning your neck. The tips vanish into mist, but for a moment, lightning flickers inside the fog above, illuminating outlines sharper than sight should allow. You catch a glimpse of patterns, triangles, intersecting arcs, etched not into the stone, but into the sky itself. And then the light dies, leaving only cloud. You move along a narrow path that coils between the spires, the ground uneven, slick with moisture. The mist parts occasionally, revealing glimpses of the surrounding land, a valley deep and green, rivers winding like silver threads far below. But each time you look too long, the view blurs, as if the world beyond is nothing more than a reflection caught in rippling water. You pause before a cluster of smaller spires, no taller than your shoulders. Their tops are carved flat, forming a circle. Moss fills the cracks, but the arrangement feels intentional, like an altar. You crouch, tracing the pattern with your fingers. The hum of the taller spires shifts, harmonizing for a moment, low tones blending into something almost musical. What secret still hides in this arrangement? Was it a place for offerings, or a map of stars no longer in the sky? A shiver runs through the mist, and shadows flicker along the stones, moving though nothing casts them. They stretch long, then vanish, leaving only pale fog. You wonder why places like this always blur the edges of time, why they fold the present into fragments of memory you cannot claim as your own. As you stand again, the hum of the spires softens, fading almost to silence. The mist curls tighter, guiding your steps toward an opening between two towers. The gap forms a narrow archway, jagged yet deliberate, its edges glowing faintly in the fog. Beyond it, the mist thickens, swirling as though stirred by unseen hands. If you remember Nan Madol from earlier, with its water-lit courtyards and channels, you sense a similar presence here. The feeling that architecture and nature have merged into something beyond design, beyond chance. These spires are not just stone. They are conduits, perhaps, or markers, pointing to places not bound by geography. The mist pulls at you, drawing you into the arch. The air grows warmer, tinged with the faint scent of smoke. You take one step forward, then another, until the spires fade behind you and a glow begins to build, faint and golden just ahead. Stone underfoot, uneven and worn, leads you into darkness that breathes with its own rhythm. The air feels older here, tinged with dust and something faintly metallic, like iron that has rusted in secret places. The glow that lured you forward fades into a dim flicker. Torches, though no one holds them. Flames gutter softly in wall sconces, their light bending across walls carved with labyrinthine lines. You are inside Knossos, or at least the place that remembers it. The corridors twist in slow spirals, each turn echoing your own footsteps back at you, a half beat too late. You pause, listening, and the silence folds over the sound like a curtain. The walls are close, textured with flaking plaster, fragments of frescoes still clinging in shades of crimson and blue. A bull's head, powerful and dark-eyed, stares from one corner where the paint has not yet faded. You wonder how many have walked this maze expecting to find only myth, and instead found echoes far more stubborn. Researchers still argue that Knossos was not a true labyrinth at all, just a sprawling palace complex, ceremonial and administrative, nothing more. But as you drift deeper into its corridors, the design feels intentional. The path coils, folds back on itself, stretches long only to collapse into sudden dead ends. Even as an invisible observer, you sense the weight of ritual in its geometry. A draft slips through, cool against your cheek. You follow it, breathing in the faint scent of burning oil, as though some procession passed only moments before. The light dims, the plaster giving way to bare stone, smooth in some places, cracked in others. Time has gnawed at these walls, yet the symmetry persists. You wouldn't believe the stories these halls could tell if they spoke. The whisper of sandals on stone, the beat of drums, the chants of voices carrying through the dark. You turn a corner, and the corridor widens into a chamber. Pillars rise from the floor, their surfaces painted once, but now stained by soot and moss. In the center lies a circle etched into the floor, faint but unmistakable. It resembles a maze within a maze, lines spiraling inward with no clear exit. You crouch, tracing its grooves, the cool stone pressing back against your fingertip. For a moment, the chamber hums, a low vibration, like the resonance of the Azuran spires, still following you here. The torchlight flickers, shadows elongating along the walls. One shadow twists differently from the rest, long horns curling where no carving should be. You blink, and it vanishes. Perhaps it was only the play of flame, or perhaps some echo of the Minotaur lingers here, not as a beast of flesh, but as the memory of fear itself. You wonder why humans carve monsters into their stories, perhaps not to remember them, but to trap them, so they cannot roam free. You drift further, past more frescoes, fragments of dancers with hands raised, their skirts flaring in painted motion. Some say these rituals were not about monsters at all, but about communion. Humans leaping over bulls, testing grace against power. If so, what secret still hides behind the myth of the Minotaur? Was it a story spun later to make sense of something older, stranger, and less easily named? The air grows warmer as you descend a set of shallow steps, torchlight stretching ahead like a path of breadcrumbs. Each archway you pass feels heavier, the stone pressing down with the weight of centuries. You pause beneath one such arch, trailing your hand along its edge. The surface is cool, damp with condensation, and etched with faint marks you cannot fully decipher. They look like scratches at first, but when you tilt your head, they resolve into spirals, overlapping like maps of forgotten constellations. If you remember Derinkuyu from earlier, those underground halls of stone, you might notice the echo, labyrinths above and below, both built to confuse, to conceal, or perhaps to protect. But here, in Knossos, the protection feels twofold, keeping something out and keeping something else in. Another chamber opens, smaller, its walls closing in. A single pillar stands at its center, chipped but upright. At its base lies a hollow depression, no wider than a bowl. Rainwater drips from above, though the ceiling shows no crack. The droplets strike the hollow with a rhythm that feels deliberate. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap. You crouch, watching ripples expand, then fade. You wonder who once stood here, listening, waiting for an answer that never came. The corridors tighten again, winding with a logic you can no longer follow. Every turn looks like the last. Every wall bears traces of paint that blur together. Red spirals, blue waves, black bulls. The air grows heavy, warm, pressing against you like a hand. You slow, breathing deeper, letting the weight settle rather than fight it. At last, you reach a chamber unlike the others. Its walls are carved smooth, curving into an oval. The torchlight glints off fragments of mica embedded in the stone, scattering faint sparks of light. At the far end, a doorway stands sealed, its stone fitted tight, its edges worn by touch. A sealed chamber, never opened in living memory. What waits behind it? Researchers still argue that sealed doors in Knossos were ceremonial, never meant to be opened. Yet you cannot shake the feeling that something hums softly on the other side. A sound too low for human ears, but not too low for stone. The torches sputter. The air shifts. A corridor opens to your left, its arch low, almost beckoning. You step toward it, the hum of the sealed door fading behind you. As you pass beneath the arch, the torchlight recedes, and a glow ahead rises, faintly green, like light filtered through water. Stone walls rise before you, their curves sweeping across the landscape like the ribs of some ancient creature. They are too tall to scale, too smooth to climb, and yet they stand without mortar. Blocks of granite fitted together so tightly you can barely slip a blade of grass between them. You've stepped into Great Zimbabwe, and the silence here is different. It isn't empty. It listens. The air is dry, tinged with dust and sun-baked earth, carrying the faint scent of grass smoldering in the distance. Birds call overhead, but their voices feel far away, softened by the weight of the stone. You trail your hand along the nearest wall. The granite is rough and cool, though the day is hot. Its texture catches your fingers, like scales of an ancient beast slumbering in the hills. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke. For centuries, travelers whispered of a golden city hidden here, a capital of kings whose wealth rivaled anything in Egypt or Mesopotamia. Later, outsiders refused to believe that the builders were African, inventing tales of Phoenicians or lost tribes. Researchers still argue over the exact purpose of the site: fortress, palace, temple, trade hub, but every theory feels smaller than the walls themselves. You step through a narrow passage, the stone closing in like a throat. The corridor bends, then opens suddenly into a wide enclosure where towers of granite rise in silence. One stands conical, tapering toward the sky, its surface rough with time. Theories claim it was a granary, but no grain has ever been found here. You tilt your head back, tracing its height against the endless blue. Could it have been a monument instead, a silent signal to the heavens, or perhaps to something deeper beneath the earth? A shadow flickers across the tower, though no cloud passes above. You pause, watching, as if the stone itself exhaled a memory. The sun strikes the walls at an angle, casting long lines that cross like a web. You wonder what secret still hides in their geometry. Messages written in stone for those who know how to read them. The ground crunches beneath your steps, scattered with shards of broken pottery, fragments of clay birds, and soapstone carvings worn smooth. You pick one up, tracing its grooves, a bird with wings spread, its eyes wide as if warning or watching. These soapstone birds are found only here, their purpose lost, their meaning still whispered. Some say they were totems of kings, others that they represented a spiritual guardian. You slip it back into the dust, and the silence deepens, as though the bird prefers to remain where it fell. If you remember the spires of Azura, where stone hummed faintly like tuning forks, you might sense an echo here too, not in sound, but in the way the walls seem to hold vibrations of the earth itself. When the wind moves across the enclosure, it shifts into low tones, like breath moving through a giant instrument. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you can almost believe the stones are alive, murmuring in voices too slow for human time. You step into another passage, narrower still, the walls pressing close. The granite is warm from the sun, radiating heat as if you've entered a kiln. The corridor winds, tighter, tighter, then suddenly releases you into a wide open plain. From here, the great walls stretch across the hills like a coiled serpent, each curve deliberate, enclosing and guiding. The horizon shimmers with heat, and the walls ripple as if bending with it. For an instant, you imagine them moving, slowly adjusting, as though the city is not a ruin, but a creature shifting in its sleep. The idea lingers, unsettling yet wondrous. After all, what is a ruin if not the skeleton of something that once lived? You rest in the shadow of the wall, feeling the coolness seep into your skin. If you're still awake, let me know in the comments. Or maybe you've already drifted halfway, carried by the hum of these stones. Either way, the labyrinth of Great Zimbabwe holds you in its arms, quiet and unhurried. A hawk cries overhead, its shadow darting across the ground. For a heartbeat, you think it dives, but when you look up, the sky is empty. The stones around you seem taller now, the conical tower sharper against the horizon. Shadows stretch along the walls, cutting patterns across the ground that feel deliberate, as if marking some calendar you cannot decipher. Researchers still argue whether these alignments track the sun or something else entirely, something we no longer name. As the day wanes, golden light paints the granite, glowing like embers. The walls blur at their edges, time folding. You blink, and the stone seems newer, sharper, echoing with footsteps you cannot see. Dancers in the enclosure, merchants with arms full of gold dust, or kings stepping through with silent retinues, their eyes hidden by shadow. The air shifts. A narrow path opens, guiding you through a gap in the stone. The passage descends gently, cooler, shadows deepening as you follow. At its end lies an arch, rough-hewn, where vines cling in stubborn threads of green. Beyond it, a different scent drifts toward you. Not dust, not grass, but salt, the faint tang of water. The sound reaches you before the sight, the hush and pull of waves, steady as breath. Salt sharpens the air, cool and damp, clinging to your lips. You step from the passage and find yourself at the edge of a rocky shoreline, the horizon glowing faintly where sea meets sky. Waves crash against stone, withdrawing in frothy sighs, as if the ocean is whispering secrets it has no intention of keeping. There, beneath the shifting surface, shadows rise into form. The Yonaguni Monument. Massive terraces of stone stretch out beneath the water, angular and precise. The sea has softened their edges, but even blurred by tides. The steps descend like a staircase cut by deliberate hands. You lean closer to the edge, waves spraying your skin with cool mist. The stones below glimmer faintly as light refracts through the water, blocks stacked, platforms squared, a geometry too stubborn to dismiss as chance. You wouldn't believe the stories these drowned stairs could tell if they spoke. Fishermen discovered them by accident in the 1980s, divers descending into what they thought were ordinary reefs, only to find colossal steps, plazas, and corridors. Some say it's natural, shaped by tectonic shifts and the chisel of waves. Others insist it was built by a forgotten civilization, older than any we know. Researchers still argue that no consensus exists, leaving the monument adrift between myth and geology. The water surges, tugging at the base of the stone, and you imagine the sound is a chant, the ocean rehearsing a hymn older than language. You kneel, watching foam curl around the rock, and the faint outline of a staircase beckons downward, each step swallowed by green-blue haze. You wonder what secret still hides beneath the tide. A gull cries overhead, its shadow darting across the waves. The air smells of kelp and brine, thick and sharp. You close your eyes, listening. Beneath the crash of waves, another sound lingers, low and resonant, like a drum struck from deep below. The rhythm comes and goes with the tide, never steady, never random. You wonder why it feels intentional, like footsteps echoing in a place no one can walk. If you remember Great Zimbabwe's towers, how they seem to hum with the earth itself, you notice the same vibration here, this time drawn out by water, a resonance stretching through stone and sea alike. The monument is alive in its silence, pulsing with questions no answer has yet untangled. You walk along the edge of the water, the sand coarse beneath your feet, mixed with shells ground into glittering dust. The tide withdraws for a moment, exposing more of the structure. A broad platform emerges, slick with seaweed, its surface cut with parallel lines, too straight for comfort. The sun glints on wet stone, dazzling your eyes. For an instant, you imagine walking out onto that platform, the sea at your ankles, the horizon bending around you. But another wave surges, reclaiming it, erasing the lines in foam. Some divers claim there are carvings beneath the waves, faces etched into rock, symbols cut into walls. You cannot see them from here, but you picture eyes staring upward through the blue, waiting for someone to notice. If such marks exist, are they warnings, offerings, or merely tricks of erosion? Human minds carving stories into stone that has no need of them. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of rain. The horizon darkens, clouds gathering with sudden force, waves crash harder, spray leaping higher against the rocks. You steady yourself against a boulder slick with moss. Lightning flickers in the distance, illuminating the water for a heartbeat. In that flash, the monument appears sharper, clearer, each line etched as if freshly carved. And then darkness folds it back beneath the waves. A lull in the storm follows. The sea calms for a breath, almost too calm, as if holding itself still. The water clears, and you glimpse a stairway leading down. Straight, deliberate, impossible. Each step disappears into the deep. You feel the pull of it, an invitation or a warning. It's hard to tell. If you're still awake, let me know in the comments. Or perhaps, by now, the tide has carried you halfway into dream. Either way, these drowned stones will wait, patient as the sea itself. A gull wheels overhead, calling once, twice, then vanishes into the growing mist. The horizon softens, waves blurring into sky. The tide rises again, covering the stairway until it looks no different from any reef, any stone battered by water. That's the trouble with ruins like this. They don't let you decide whether they are natural or human. They leave you adrift, as uncertain as the line where ocean meets air. The rain begins, soft at first, then steadier, striking the surface of the sea in countless silver pinpricks. You step back beneath a stone arch along the shoreline, sheltered, watching as the monument disappears into stormlight and foam. Yet even as waves churn, you sense the stairs remain, waiting below, carved into memory deeper than the sea. When the rain eases, the sky parts just enough to reveal a faint glow ahead, golden and warm. A path curves along the coast, leading inland, where mountains rise shrouded in cloud. You take one last glance at the ocean, the drowned stairway hidden once more, then turn toward the glow. The path bends away from the shore, climbing into hills where mist coils low across the ground. The air cools, carrying a metallic scent, sharp and faintly sweet, like rain striking stone long before it falls. You crest a ridge, and there it is, the obsidian causeway. It stretches black and gleaming across the land, a road that seems less built than summoned, as if the earth itself was forced into form. Blocks of volcanic glass, fitted seamlessly, glint in uneven light. The surface mirrors the sky, broken only by cracks where grass and pale flowers push through. You step onto it, and the sound changes instantly. Your footsteps no longer crunch, but ring soft and hollow, like tapping glass with a fingertip. The causeway runs straight, impossibly straight, toward a horizon shrouded in shifting haze. You wouldn't believe the stories these stones could tell if they spoke. Some say it was laid by forgotten priests who wanted a road that would never age. Others whisper it was not laid at all, but poured, molten black stretching until it cooled into a ribbon. Researchers still argue whether the material is natural obsidian shaped by hands, or some unknown alloy not found elsewhere. The surface reflects the clouds overhead, doubling the sky. For a moment, it feels as though you are walking above nothing, balanced between two skies, one real, one mirrored. You steady yourself, slowing your pace, breathing in the strange calm. Shadows drift across the obsidian, yet when you glance upward, no cloud has moved. A fragment lies loose at the edge, small enough to pick up. You lift it, its weight heavier than expected, edges sharp. It catches light in strange ways, sometimes opaque, sometimes translucent, sometimes glowing faintly as though lit from within. You set it back down. Better not to pocket what the earth prefers to keep. The air shifts. A hum begins, low and steady, traveling through the causeway itself. You kneel, pressing your palm to the glassy stone. The vibration moves through your skin, settling into your bones like the faint echo of a heartbeat. If you remember Yonaguni's drowned stairways, you'll notice the same pull here, the sense that architecture can hold a rhythm beyond human time. The mist parts briefly, revealing the causeway's edge. Sheer drops fall away to either side, cliffs plunging into valleys so deep you cannot see the bottom. The black road hangs between them like a bridge suspended by nothing, daring you to question how it stays. Wind rushes upward, cool and dry, tugging at the edges of your clothing. You pause halfway across a long stretch. The surface ahead shimmers, as though heat rises from it, though the air remains cool. In the ripple, faint figures move, shadows walking the causeway, long cloaks trailing, heads bowed. You blink, and the shimmer vanishes, leaving only the mirrored sky beneath your feet. You wonder what secret still hides inside this ribbon of black glass. Was it a path to a city, a ritual walkway, or a road meant to lead nowhere but into mystery itself? The silence deepens, even the wind stills. For a long moment, all you hear is your own breath, the steady rhythm of air drawn in and out. Then, soft, almost imperceptible, a whisper passes along the causeway, carried by no mouth. You cannot catch words, only the cadence of language. It lingers, then fades into the mist. If you're still awake, perhaps you felt this. Some ruins don't just tell stories, they listen. And here, on the obsidian causeway, it feels as though the road itself remembers every step, every voice, every secret offered to it. The horizon ahead glows faintly, golden and warm, as though a city lies beyond. But as you walk further, the glow recedes, always just out of reach, like a memory you can't quite hold. The causeway narrows, black glass cracked and uneven, until finally it breaks into fragments that sink into the earth. Grass and stone reclaim them, soft and unhurried. You step off the last slab, the obsidian cool beneath your foot for the final time. Behind you, the road gleams once more, stretching back into mist as if it had never ended. Ahead, the land softens into hills, veiled in twilight. The journey through ruins and mysteries has brought you here, where paths blur and endings fold into beginnings. The land ahead softens, and so does the sound of your steps. The obsidian has fallen away behind you, and now you walk on grass that bends quietly, making no protest beneath your weight. A breeze moves through the low hills, gentle and steady, carrying the faint fragrance of earth after rain. You pause and lift your eyes to the horizon. The sky is no longer heavy with mist. Instead, it stretches wide, a canvas of muted stars trembling faintly, like scattered lanterns across a velvet sea. No monuments stand here, no carved stones, no mysteries to question, only open air and calm silence. Each breath feels easier now, slower, deeper. The ruins you've walked through, the drowned stairways, the silent vaults, the endless causeway, all begin to blur in memory, as though they were dreams already slipping into the distance. They were heavy, with whispers and unanswered questions, yet none of that weight follows you now. Only the stillness remains, wrapping around you like a soft cloak. You notice how the world grows quieter with every step. Even the night creatures have hushed, leaving only the rhythm of your breathing and the slow thrum of your heartbeat. You let your shoulders rest. Your body eases into the pace of the night, and the night eases into you. Ahead, the hills fold into one another, rising gently until they cradle a hollow of shadow. You know without thinking that this is where the path leads, not toward discovery, not toward fear, but toward rest. You step into the hollow. The grass here is softer, the air warmer, and the stars above burn just faintly enough to keep watch without intruding. You close your eyes. The world continues its silent turning, ancient and unhurried, while you drift deeper, carried by the same quiet rhythm that has held every ruin, every stone, every forgotten story. Sleep now. The journey is safe. The mysteries will wait.